911.
We're actually tearing down a garage today, and there's a dead man in the yard. It's like an abandoned. I mean, there's no one living in the house. It's a foreclosed home that the guy's just laying in the yard.
When a woman's lifeless body was discovered in a remote area of Ohio, with her jaw being cruelly broken and a gunshot wound to her head, no one could have imagined that soon the unbelievable would become undeniable.
Now it's our job to start looking into things of who may have done this.
With suspicion falling on everyone, the real killer hid in plain sight, closer than anyone had ever expected.
There was a garbage bag over the passenger seat, and I asked him what happened, and he said he spilled chemicals in the car, and he had a couple bottles with him.
And everything laid down to a damning CCTV which captured 3 mysterious figures at the exact location of the murder and just one phone call from the mother, which unraveled the dark and sinister plot of the killer.
They called me and told me that he made amends with his life. What the hell is going on? Where in the hell is Walmart?
On March 14, 2016, in Antwerp, Ohio, police rushed to a disturbing 911 call about a terrifying discovery. But what seemed like just another murder case at first turned out to have much deeper and more chilling layers.
You sure?
If you look at her, she looks.
At first glance, the body appeared to belong to a small-framed woman, with her hair spread out and dried blood covering her. Because of this, the officers focused on examining her first to determine what might have caused her death.
What? Do you have gloves?
Yeah. I don't want to move her though.
I'll say for sure. Also, collar a little bit. See if we get it.
Look at her finger.
Yeah.
You see her finger, Shane? It's like shot through.
The woman had what looked like defensive wounds, including a finger that appeared to have been shot, almost as if she had raised her hand to shield herself from a gun. After examining her, police determined that the cause of death was a gunshot wound to the head. While waiting for the coroner's arrival, the police shifted their focus to the 911 caller, hoping to gather more information.
So you guys were just here to tear down the garage?
Yeah, well, so they sent me his work orders.
Okay.
Work from Allen County.
When did you get this? Do you have an extra copy of that by chance?
I don't.
So when were you here previously? Okay. Hey Shane, 4 or 5 days max it looks like. Who all then came with you today?
He's my dad, and those other 2 guys are my cousins.
According to the caller, when they arrived, they noticed something in the yard that hadn't been there before, which immediately caught their attention. At first, they thought it might be a discarded Halloween decoration, randomly tossed onto the property. But when they walked closer to check, they realized it was something that soon became their worst nightmare.
We asked the crew members if they'd be willing to give us DNA.
Just hold that and let that dry for a minute.
Right in towards the bottom of your jaw. Like right in here. Kind of go back and forth a few times. That's good. And then do the other one with the other side. If you can hold them both, that keeps us from touching them. And if you just hold them for a few seconds while they dry, then have them drop them in the envelope.
A short while later, the county coroner also arrived at the scene, and that's when even more gruesome details began to emerge.
Brain matter on the top.
Yep. Missing upper front tooth. And her mouth's closed, so. Get a picture of that grass. See that grass is going that way? Alright. Huh? Oh yeah, that's going that way. Yeah.
Almost looks like there's some drag.
Yeah, see that? Yeah, see her shoes are all muddy. So she was drugged right there.
There were faint skid marks and drag marks stretched across the stone driveway, leading into the yard. The woman's body lay face down with her arms extended above her head, suggesting that the killer had grabbed her by the arms to drag her. But there was more evidence confirming this. The tops of her shoes were covered in grass and bits of gravel, which was a clear sign that she had been pulled from the driveway into the yard.
And we also found a partial denture in the driveway, which would have been close to the area where a vehicle would have been parked. A little further examination, we did find a bullet projectile at the base of her neck, just inside her collar of her jacket. That was taken as evidence, and that was later determined to be a 9mm bullet.
After carefully examining the scene and gathering all possible evidence, the investigators reached out to the Allen County Sheriff's Office in Indiana and the Fort Wayne Police Department. They wanted to check if any woman matching the victim's description had been reported missing. It didn't take long before they received a response that there were 3 missing women in the area, and one of them was an exact match to the victim they had just found.
They got a 50 or a 44-year-old that looks really rough, 5'1", blonde hair.
That's her.
Is missing.
Bone thinny? Bone skinny?
Yeah, she's real thin. Yep. Schwartz.
The woman found in the yard was identified as Wilma Schwartz, a mother to a young son. She had been reported missing by a neighbor in Fort Wayne, Indiana on March 9, 2016, just 5 days before her lifeless body was discovered.
I remember when I got the call from my mother to tell me that Wilma, she'd been murdered. I was shocked. It blew me away. That news was quite shocking and devastating.
While Wilma's family was still grieving their heartbreaking loss, the investigation was already in motion. At first, detectives believed that whoever had killed Wilma intentionally left her body in Ohio to make the case more complicated. But as they dug deeper, their concerns grew. The most alarming detail was that Wilma hadn't been seen or heard for days, something entirely out of character for her, as she was extremely close to her young son.
She had not come out to pick up her son at school, and this was very out of character for Wilma.
Now it's our job to start looking into things of who may have done this and where are they now. They did have a 5-day head start on law enforcement, which can make it very difficult.
Wilma's injuries made investigators suspect that her murder was personal, filled with rage rather than random violence. This meant the first step was to look at people close to her, anyone who might have had a reason to hurt her. Whether it was someone from her family, a friend, or even a past relationship, investigators needed to find out who could have wanted her dead. It didn't take long before they uncovered their first significant lead, pushing the case in a new direction.
We learned that Wilma was involved in a pretty tumultuous relationship with an ex-boyfriend that she was living with by the name of Daniel Zerby.
Before tracking down Daniel Zerby Sr., investigators discovered that his son, Daniel Zerby Jr., was already in custody at the Wells County Jail in Indiana. This new information gave them another possible angle to explore. They questioned Zerby Jr. first instead of going straight to their prime suspect. If his father had been in contact with him or mentioned anything about Wilma's murder, it could have given them crucial insight into the case. With that in mind, they arranged an interview with him to uncover any useful information.
We'd like to talk to you about something. Okay.
You willing to talk to me after everything you said? All right. This is mainly just to get some history, okay? When did your dad come from Tennessee? Do you know?
Like I hear stuff, you know what I'm saying? But like, it was before when I got arrested. I had to be within a week before then.
A week before you got arrested?
What Zerby Jr. revealed next only deepened the mystery. He told investigators that his father, Zerby Sr., and his girlfriend Lisa King had been living with Wilma under the same roof. This shocking detail raised many questions. Why would Wilma, a victim of domestic violence at the hands of Zerby Sr., continue to stay in the same house with him? It didn't make any sense at all.
I don't know. She used to be married to I can't think of her last name.
Okay. You know where's Lisa?
But she was married to your Uncle Leroy?
Before. Yeah.
How long before? Years?
10 years.
10 years?
Yes,
Okay, but then
I was like,
her and your dad became a couple.
as far as I know.
You know how long they've been a couple?
Like,
Months, years?
not probably not. It was just our prisoners. Probably not years. Maximum months. If it was.
The case was becoming more tangled and messy with every new piece of information. Zerby Jr. revealed something even more surprising. Lisa wasn't just his father's girlfriend. She was also married to his uncle, Leroy Zerby.
When you add ex-girlfriends, current girlfriends, violence, domestic violence, narcotics, eventually something's going to let go.
She never said she was worried your dad was going to kill her.
That's me.
What would have... I know you've been in here, so you don't, you know...
I just hear stuff, you know what I mean?
Right. But you know your dad, you know Wilma, what could have happened?
Wilma never left her son. She dropped her son off, and she would never leave her son sitting there waiting at school. I know that for a fact.
Right.
After the interview, investigators felt they had gathered enough details about Wilma's connection to Zerby Sr. They were now more confident that they were heading in the right direction. But just as they started to piece things together, another unexpected news arrived.
At this point of the investigation, we were informed that Lisa King had been arrested in Cook County, Illinois. It was determined that we would send officers to Chicago to try to interview her to see what she knew about Wilma's death.
Though investigators were able to arrange an interview with Lisa reasonably quickly, it didn't go as they had hoped.
I tried to help all she did, but then I don't know how to explain it. And I understand I've got a job to do.
I'm not beating you up. I think you were just a lady that was bad situation that you got yourself into, and now we need to figure out how to get you out.
Between the drugs and this monster of a man, I feel you just didn't have a choice in the matter, and for some reason, I don't think you're still being honest with us.
I said, if if it was different, I would tell you. But it's not. I mean, I can't sit here and tell you something that's not true. You know, I don't know how to explain.
That wouldn't help our case anyway. If you're telling stuff, just get us shut up.
But I know I wouldn't. But I would help you all without trying to help anybody I can.
I'm just telling you, if there's something that you do know and you ponder whether you need to get help or not, that's time to pull out that card and use it. All right. If you got any other questions for us, let us know.
From the start, it is evident that Lisa knew more than she was willing to share. However, no matter how much they pressed her, she refused to give any further information. And with no cooperation from Lisa, detectives found themselves at a dead end. Even though they had strong suspicions about Zerby Sr. and considered him their prime suspect, they still didn't have any solid evidence directly linking him to Wilma's murder. But there was one crucial lead they could still follow: Wilma's car. She owned a red Pontiac Sunfire, which could hold valuable clues. But the problem was that it was missing, so they decided to turn to the public for help, hoping someone had seen the car and could lead them to its location.
Within hours of reaching out to the public through a press release, the car was located just south of Fort Wayne, Indiana, in Markle, Indiana, at a convenience store gas station.
The missing red Pontiac Sunfire was processed by the Fort Wayne Police Department's crime scene unit, and investigators wasted no time in securing a search warrant to examine the vehicle thoroughly. What they found inside was more than just clues. It was evidence that told a chilling story of struggle and what happened just moments before Wilma's final moments.
We were made known of some very important evidence that was found inside that vehicle. Specifically, the passenger seat in the front was covered in suspected blood. There was a lot of cleanup material that was located inside the vehicle. And one of the most important pieces of the puzzle was the spent shell casing for a firearm that was located inside the vehicle. And at this point, with having the bullet from the crime scene and locating the spent casing in the car, things were starting to add up.
Inside the car, they also located a 9mm shell casing, which was solid proof that a gun had been fired from within the vehicle. The evidence suggested that Wilma had been sitting in the passenger seat when she was shot. The bullet entered the left side of her head, passing through her left hand, strongly indicating that she had raised it in a desperate attempt to shield herself. This crucial detail led the investigators to a conclusion that the shooter was most likely in the driver's seat when the fatal shot was fired. But the discoveries didn't stop there. They uncovered something even more significant as they continued combing through the vehicle.
Inside the Pontiac Sunfire, we also located a receipt from a home improvement store showing the recent purchase of cleaning supplies. That helps us determine when the products were purchased and gives us a timeline from when Wilma went missing until she was discovered.
With this new evidence in hand, investigators turned their attention to Wilma's last known location, a home improvement store. They needed to find out exactly who had purchased the cleaning supplies. If Wilma had bought them herself, she would still be alive. But if someone else had made the purchase, there was a strong chance the killer had been caught on the store's CCTV cameras. As investigators carefully reviewed the surveillance footage, they finally spotted what they were looking for: Wilma's red Pontiac Sunfire pulling into the store's parking lot. A few moments later, not Wilma, but a man stepped out of the driver's seat and walked into the store.
We determined that male subject was Daniel Zerbe Sr.
As we watch the security footage later in the film, when he returns to the counter, he does in fact have the cleaning supplies that appear to be consistent with the items that are on the receipt. And then we watch the individual exit the store and return to the red sports car.
As they continued watching the footage, they saw Zerbe Sr. leave the store and get into Wilma's car. But just as he was about to drive off, a red Dodge Durango pulled up in front of the store. Moments later, Wilma's car also pulled up right beside it. The whole interaction seemed highly suspicious, as if it wasn't just a random meeting. Then, an unidentified man stepped out of the Dodge Durango while Zerbe Sr. got out of Wilma's car, and the two men walked together into the convenience store. This was a significant clue, as whoever this unknown man was, he seemed likely that he must know something about Wilma's murder. But when investigators thought they had seen it all, what happened next left them completely stunned.
The video surveillance shows the two men exit the convenience store, and Daniel Zerbe Sr. gets it back into the Pontiac Sunfire and pulls it over to the side of the store into a different part of the parking lot. The unknown male then drives the Dodge Durango to the Sunfire. Daniel Zerbe gets out of the Pontiac Sunfire, gets in the Durango, and then a female is seen getting out of the Pontiac Sunfire. We determined it was no other than Lisa King.
Lisa was sitting in the same passenger seat where Wilma had been, and that seat was utterly stained with blood. This was undeniable proof that Lisa hadn't been honest with investigators. She hadn't just withheld information, she had outright lied about knowing nothing about Wilma's murder. But now, the truth was starting to unravel. Lisa wasn't just a bystander, she was directly involved. And as investigators pieced everything together, they knew it was only a matter of time before an inmate came forward with a bombshell and exposed the actual cards.
During this point of the investigation, we were informed that an inmate at the Wells County, Indiana jail said that she had information concerning Lisa King's involvement in the homicide of Wilma Schwartz.
Is there anything else you can remember right now?
Lisa says she couldn't understand why he should cut the arm out of the shirt.
His shirt?
Yeah, where I guess the blood had spewed over it. But the shirt, she said, was either in the trunk of the car or at his brother Leroy's house. Do y'all know if that little boy's doing okay?
He's with Wilma's family now. In two of his siblings. Did she tell you what time Wilma was killed? What time of day?
No, I didn't even ask. You know, I didn't. If she would have been here longer, I could have got a lot more out of her. Yeah, that little boy, I dream about it. About him waiting there for Wilma to come pick him up, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not perfect by no means. I've had my share of trouble. But, you know, that little boy needs justice.
If we need you for court, you're going to be available, right?
I promise, yes.
The inmate had all the details so specific that only someone who had been inside the car when Wilma was shot could have known them. The only other possibility was that Lisa herself had confessed everything to the inmate. Either way, this was a breakthrough in the case. With this new information, investigators knew it was time to confront Lisa. They had gathered enough evidence to corner her, and now there was no room for her lies. When they finally sat her down and laid out everything they had uncovered, Lisa's confidence began to crack, and her carefully built walls of deception started to crumble.
So what happened after that point?
Wilma came to me that night. She said, Lisa, whatever happens with Daniel happens. But that's when she formally asked me if I would be there for her. And I thanked her. Anyway, within the next couple of days, I wound up going back over there. She was in definite fear.
Wilma. Yeah. Why do you say that?
Scared to death. I mean, it's just obvious.
So you, excuse me, you two had plans at that point. Might not have been definite plans, but you had plans at that point. In so many words, to get out of that crazy situation.
That's right.
Am I summing it up all right? Okay. So you see her the next day?
Yeah.
And that's when she's obviously fearful for her well-being?
Yeah.
You went there in the red car.
Mm-hmm.
Was there anything unusual about the red car? Where did you ride?
In the passenger seat, yeah.
What was unusual?
There was a garbage bag over the
So-
passenger seat, and I asked him what happened, and he said he spilled chemicals in the car, and he had a couple bottles with him, and it reeked. I mean, it reeked.
And could you see anything other than the garbage bag?
Jacket, like laid over, and a board, little board was there.
Did you see any discoloration on any of that?
No. No, sir.
Any stain?
No, sir.
What was under that bag? Can you tell me what was under that bag?
I don't know.
What do you think was under that bag?
I don't know. I'm scared to say, actually.
What do you think it was?
I don't know. I don't want to know.
Do you think it was chemical? Truthfully.
Now that I look back or think on it, I don't know. I was scared to look. You follow your gut. You feel, for
What's
me,
your gut? You're right. What's your gut?
you know, it's something went wrong.
Lisa admitted that she had wondered if Zerby Sr. was involved in Wilma's murder, but she claimed she was too afraid to ask him. This raised even more doubts for investigators. Was she genuinely intimidated by him, too scared to question his actions? Or was she still trying to hide the whole truth? Her hesitation made it difficult to tell whether she was a frightened witness or an active participant in the crime.
We informed her that she had been indicted by the Paulding County Grand Jury for tampering with evidence. And then we took DNA samples from Lisa King.
I've never done this before, so I don't know.
All it is I'm going to put it back in the bottom part of your gum on the one side, then I'll go to the top. I'm just going to twist it around, then I'll go to the other side.
Okay.
All right?
All right.
Before the interview ended, Lisa finally revealed one crucial detail. The man driving the red Dodge Durango was Zerby Sr.'s brother, Leroy. With this information, investigators had their next target set, as Leroy could hold the key to solving the case. If he had been in contact with Zerby Sr., he might know who the real killer was. When the investigators brought Leroy in for the interview, he didn't hesitate. Almost immediately, he admitted that he had received multiple text messages and phone calls from Zerby Sr.
Looks like he was calling you quite a bit. Yeah. Looks like there's several text messages deleted from him throughout the day there. I mean, it's showing.
Yeah, I see it.
I mean, to and from. 11:05 a.m. It looks like you got a call from him, or actually, you called him. Tell me about that. What did he say? How'd he say, come pick me up? Me?
Yeah, he said, come to me, I'm ready to get tires in front of me in his car and possibly put it here. All right. I got there and went to go there. Okay. I said, he's like, well, you're going to put it over the Fort Wayne. If it's far to look at it, all right. And then I asked the clerk if it parked farther. So he asked me, I was able to block him the hallway. Hold it there next to him, and he grabbed his little bitty black button wherever he goes. And we just both got in the truck.
Okay.
Went there and looked around.
Where'd you guys go from there?
We went to Fort Wayne, got on Coliseum. He was supposed to be meeting up with some guy somewhere. He kept calling. I don't know if the guy didn't want to work or what, but he said it fell through.
At this point in the interview, we did not know if Leroy had any involvement with Wilma Schwartz's death.
According to Leroy, he had no knowledge of Wilma's murder. However, he did recall something unusual. The day after he dropped off Zerby Sr. and Lisa, he received a call from his mother. Did she know something about the crime? With this possibility in mind, investigators saw an opportunity. They asked Leroy to call his mother right then and there, and as the conversation unfolded, their suspicions were confirmed. They had been right all along.
Hello.
Hey, honey.
How you doing?
Nothing. Waiting on my sister to come get her baby.
You tell me what you're.
Hey, I got 2 detectives with him.
Alright. What? Yes?
We're investigating Wilma's death. We understand that you might know something about that.
Well, Daniel had called me and told me that he made a mess of his life and he just kept saying she was gone.
Okay.
Now, I didn't understand half of his conversation. Whatever phones those people are using up there is muffled when they call my phone.
Okay. But he told you she was gone.
Yes.
And that's when you called Leroy then? Is that,
yes.
Okay. And that's when you told him, yeah, you probably ought to call the police?
Well, I told him that.
So you were fearful that he probably, something happened with Wilma?
Not only that, but I'm fearful for Daniel. I don't know what he's doing. Daniel was acting crazy. I wanted to know what the hell was going on. Where in the hell is Wilma?
As investigators worked tirelessly to build a solid case against Zerby Sr., they continued gathering physical evidence to strengthen their findings. Every new detail brought them closer to proving his involvement in Wilma's murder. But just as they were an inch closer to revealing the killer's mask, they received unexpected news that ended their long and exhausting investigation.
Our case was getting stronger against Daniel Sr., but we needed to find the murder weapon and connect him to it. And then we find out that he was arrested in Auburn, Indiana, in possession of a 9mm handgun.
The firearm that Zerby Sr. had in his possession was sent to the BCI crime lab for testing. Along with it, they submitted the bullet recovered from Wilma's body and the 9mm shell casing found inside her car. These items would determine once and for all whether Zerby Sr.'s gun was the murder weapon. When the results finally came back, they were precisely what investigators had been waiting for.
The lab was able to determine that the bullet found on Wilma Schwartz's body was fired out of the 9mm handgun, along with the casing that was found in the car. They were all a match.
With Zerby Sr. now in custody, investigators turned their attention back to Lisa. They needed the final truth from her, and this time, they had undeniable proof to confront her. They presented her with the 9mm handgun that had been found in Zerby Sr.'s possession, the very weapon that had taken Wilma's life. There was no way to deny it anymore as Lisa stared at the gun, the weight of the evidence pressed down on her.
At this point, that's all we have, but you can make the difference. You can make the difference to make some sort of closure for this poor little kid. If nothing else comes of this, he's going to come to our office one day and he's going to say, I want to see records of my mom. And you know what he's going to see, and I've got them here, but I'm not going to show you. They're too graphic. They're gruesome. He's going to see pictures of his mom thrown away like trash.
But what he can see is that his mom had a friend and her name was Lisa.
Exactly.
And she stepped up and did the right thing.
At this point, that's all we have, but you can make the difference. That gun, the gun in Auburn, when they came and arrested him, and you were there, that's the gun that killed her. That's the gun that killed her.
Is that the same gun that you saw in Auburn that you recall him carrying on a daily basis?
That gun shot a bullet that fell out of her head.
And we can show that by
That's done.
science. Right.
That's done. That's case closed on that.
Though the case had finally concluded, investigators still wanted to hear Zerby Sr.'s side of the story. They gave him the chance to confess, to explain his actions, but he refused to say a single word. With the overwhelming evidence against him, there was no need for further discussion. With no other option, authorities moved forward with his conviction. In November 2017, the time for justice had arrived. Zerby Daniel Sr. pleaded guilty to the murder of Wilma Schwartz and was sentenced to 15 years to life in prison. Meanwhile, Lisa King was indicted on 2 counts of tampering with evidence for her role in covering up the crime. For investigators and Wilma's grieving family, it had been a long and painful journey. The case had been complex, filled with shocking twists and heartbreaking details. But in the end, justice was served. It was not an easy ending, but it was a satisfying one. Wilma's killer was behind bars and her loved ones could finally begin to heal.
From all the evidence we gathered from Ohio and Indiana, my best guess is Daniel Zerby still resented Wilma. Wilma had become stronger from being away from Daniel, so she was standing up for herself a little bit more. And I believe that Daniel wanted Wilma out of his life. Getting a conviction on Daniel Zerby gives me a lot of satisfaction to be able to give Wilma Schwartz and her family the justice she deserves. Sometimes we can't prove cases, but everything and all the work everybody did in this case helped us get this resolved.
What are your thoughts on this case? What could be the reason for Zerby Sr. to kill Wilma in such a horrific manner? Was Lisa really not involved in Wilma's murder, or was there a sinister story still buried under lies?